This video contains excerpts of copyrighted music used for educational and analytical purposes and is protected by fair use laws. Enjoy.
Power metal! Yeah, that's how we're going to start this video. We're just going to yell the words, power metal! And scare my cats. They're in here somewhere. Oh, there they are. Can't see them, but they're there. I love power metal. It is my all-time favorite subgenre of my favorite genre of music, that being metal. And if you're just clicking this video, then I'm going to go on a limb and assume that you know what power metal is. But if you don't, I'll just give you a quick little rundown in case you're new to it or someone interested.
Common elements in power metal include a strong emphasis on melody and symphony, often sounding softer compared to other metal genres. For example, yeah, that's not power metal.
This is the cursed stage, where hope is hard to find. A world consumed by fire and cruel to all mankind.
Now that's power metal. Themes of power metal are often centered on high fantasy or medieval adventures. If you're listening to power metal song, then chances are it's talking about swords, sorcery, dragons, demons.
Poison, spells, battles, maiming, killing.
Power metal is like giving your Dungeons & Dragons campaign a heavy metal soundtrack. This is music to ride into battle with. If you're into it, you probably love fantasy, medieval history, or might even own a sword or two. And Conan the Barbarian? I believe he needs no introduction at all. A staple of American pop culture, and patient zero for the heroic barbarian archetype in fiction. Even if you've never seen a movie, read a book, or played a game featuring Conan, I guarantee you've encountered at least one character inspired by him. Conan is my all-time favorite character in fiction, so when you mash my love of power metal with the barbarian badass, you get something that I'm 100% going to be checking out. If I may deviate just for a second, one of the most common elements power metal bands write songs about is, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings or anything else set within the Middle-earth universe. Conan, being older than Lord of the Rings, naturally has a place in power metal, with several acts making songs and full-blown albums inspired by his timeless tales. And what this video is going to try to do is compile as many of them as I can in some kind of loose historical telling of Robert E. Howard's character and influence on the genre of music that wouldn't exist until 50 or so years after his passing.
So welcome to Metal and Sorcery, the power metal history of Conan the Barbarian. This would be so much easier and cooler if I had a mic stand instead of just having it between my legs or something. It's on back order. It'll be here soon. I hope.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of their women. That is good. That is good.
In my research, the earliest song that I could find that directly relates to Conan and is in the heavy metal genre is about the classic tale Queen of the Black Coast, titled, well, Queen of the Black Coast, by the band Manila Road from their 1982 album simply called Metal. Manila Road is not explicitly a power metal band, save for one album, Open the Gates from 1985, which does contain two songs that, although are not explicitly stated in the lyrics, are definitely about Conan, that being The Road of Kings, named after the Carl Wagner novel,
Your dreams are just the torment of life. Break away from your anxieties today. Don't ever let them
and Hour of the Dragon, named after the legendary Howard story. I didn't want to omit Manila Road despite them not being a full-blown power metal band outside of one album, but the late founder of the band, Mark Sheldon, is, to my research, the first metal musician of any kind to make a song about Conan, and in part did do one of the earliest power metal albums before the genre really found its identity. So rest in peace, Mark. You were a true pioneer, and I'd also like to mention that, in my opinion, their best song about the Conan mythos is The Books of Skelos from their 1990 album, The Courts of Chaos.
Holy cross turned upside down, burning empires to the ground. I said legions march to war.
From Manila Road to one of the cheesiest acts in heavy metal history, and one of the first power metal bands ever, we have Manowar. And on their album Into Glory Ride from 1983, they put out Secret of Steel, which is, to my research, the first true power metal song about Conan.
Atop the mountain where the river of steel flows, black is the forest.
Classic song and one of Manowar's finest to date. Now, while the lyrics don't mention Conan by name, let's look at the date of this album's release. 1983, just 1 year after the release of the box office juggernaut and Arnold Schwarzenegger's breakout role. You know it, I know it, my favorite film of all time, 1982's Conan the Barbarian.
And in the darkness of chaos, they fooled Crom. And they took from him the enigma of steel. The gods forgot the secret of steel and left it on the battlefield.
The riddle of steel.
Yes. You know what it is, don't you, boy?
Secret of Steel, Riddle of Steel, and tomato tomato. This is a Conan song through and through, and I'll hear no counter arguments. Now, here are some bands from the 80s that I found that are worth mentioning, but they haven't really explicitly made songs about Conan or his world at large, but the Barbarians' influence is there in spirit. Omen's Battle Cry is their only foray into power metal, as well as their debut album. They transitioned to a more standard heavy metal act afterwards. The album is about barbarism, executions, great battles, bedding women. All of these things are present during the Hyborian age of Conan.
Bow down to the axeman, wouldn't think about more fear. Bow down to the axeman, sun is rising, time is near.
Virgin Steel's entire 80s output was very Conan-esque, if you ask me. But the one album that I feel is the most Conan is their 1985 Noble Savage. Now, there's been some debate as to whether or not Conan counts as a Noble Savage archetype, but the song by Virgin Steel, and yes, that is their band name, definitely embodies a Conan spirit of a noble man in a savage world, conquering it day by day and building his own kingdom. We're going to crawl out of the 1980s, and honestly, I always expected way more Conan power metal from that decade, because that was the height of Conan's cultural popularity as well as metals. And then again, power metal has always been considered the basement dweller of heavy metal and was in its infancy at the time, so who knows. I am sure that there are several 80s power metal bands who have done songs about Conan that I've missed, but to be honest, I'm not too well versed in old school heavy metal as it was, because that was way before my time. But as we enter the 90s, where hair metal went to die,
I'll end you!
You can bet that power metal, its nerdy cousin that didn't have a fraction of the mainstream popularity, was relegated back to where it was probably formed, in dimly lit basements where nerds pretended to be elves and rolled dice while doing math for fun. Hey, no hate. I mean, I did it too. But I bet you knew that already. Conan's influence on metal bands fortunately never really died. It's still around today, and I'll be talking about a lot of them as we get on. But in the 90s comes Baal Sagoth, taken directly from Conan mythos known as the Isle of the Gods, and they are power metal. I mean, that is full-blown black metal. And honestly, it's not really my thing, but I gotta give kudos to these guys for keeping the Conan mythos alive through the 90s. I would also like to add that their second album is called, I kid you not, Starfire Burning Upon the Ice-Veiled Throne of Ultima Thule, and it's about the vocalist's original character, Kaelin Tor, whom he has written books about and cited Robert E. Howard as a direct inspiration. They do have songs with instrumentation similar to the Basil Poledouris Conan soundtrack on this album, and those songs are called... And lo, when the Imperium marches against Gul Kathoth, then the dark sorcery shall enshroud the citadel of the Obsidian Crown, Episode 8, and in the raven-haunted forests of Darkenhold, where shadows reign and the hues of sunlight never dance.
What?
You know, I kind of want to check out the stories of Kaelin Tor now. I found out that they are released through a publisher called DMR, and this led me down a rabbit hole of other creators inspired by Robert E. Howard doing their own fantasy books. Kindred spirits are we. I'm working on my own right now. Okay, so back on track. The 90s were kind of a barren wasteland for Conan-inspired power metal to my research. I really couldn't find anybody who did any kind of songs in the 90s. I'm sure there were a handful, but they must be some really underground releases. Not to say that power metal itself was dead in that decade, because these guys existed. Iced Earth, Blind Guardian, Hammerfall, Ed Guy, Rhapsody of Fire, Angra, and Sonata Arctica. The band that I was actually made fun of for liking by other metalheads. You see what I mean about the nerdy basement dweller status of power metal? Yeah. But it seems like Conan's influence on power metal has weakened. Then the 2000s hit. Iron Sword released their album Return of the Warrior in 2004, and just about every song on this album is about our bare-chested barbarian hero of yore.
Son of God, the last one standing over all the ways. Free barbarian that knows no master. Trust the sword.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of mid in my opinion. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but for an album in 2004, it sounds like it stepped out of the mid-80s, production value and all. But that didn't stop the boys of Iron Sword, as their production values did increase over time, and their more gruff 1980s throwback sound is definitely a stylistic choice. Plus, to my research, they were the first band to solely dedicate their writing to Conan, and that alone is worthy of my respect. So, screw what I say. I prefer my metal to be more punchy and catchy than this more traditional heavy metal, thrash metal mix they got going on. But it doesn't matter. It's Conan, it's metal, and by default, it's awesome. In the 2000s, it was a bit better for Conan. At least I actually found some music acts that did songs about Conan. But if you can believe it, and here's another slight detour, there's one dark fantasy character that I'm surprised is as prominent as he is in metal, and that's Elric of Melniboné. You know, the character that The Witcher kinda sorta plagiarizes. But I don't want to get into that at all right now. Why am I bringing it up, though? Well, because in power metal, there's a band called Domine, who usually does albums dedicated to the Elric saga, and they penned an awesome Conan song, the Aquilonia Suite, on their album Emperor of the Black Runes.
By barbarian strength and Cimmerian pride,
also want to add that they too took some musical inspiration from Basil Poledris' Conan soundtrack in that same song, and it's beautiful. While it might look like Conan's influence on power metal has dwindled, or honestly was never really felt at all due to the niche nature of the subgenre, but you would be sorely mistaken, as Conan's impact on power metal is greater today than it ever was in decades past. Not just bands who write songs dedicated to him and the lore of Hyboria, but also bands who are very obviously inspired by him. From the 2010s to today, we've gotten a ton of acts like this, and I'm going to be listing a few of my favorites, starting with Eternal Champion, which is another Elric reference, but whatever, just listen. I better not get flagged for showing that album cover because it's art, it exists on YouTube without age restriction, and I'll be miffed if it happens. Anyway, I really dig Eternal Champion, whom definitely peppered the energy of Conan throughout their lyrics and musicianship. I mean, their album covers are very obviously inspired by master painter Frank Frazetta, creator of Death Dealer and one of the most iconic paintings of Conan ever. Crom doesn't hide their inspiration from Conan because right from the get-go, their name gives it away. This is probably my favorite power metal act inspired by Conan lore to date. Throw a dart and you will hit a great Crom song.
On wings of fire, I soar. On wings of fire. Like a phoenix from the ashes, I will rise. On wings of fire. On wings of...
Catchy, epic, grand, and just an all-around top-tier band. If you're going to listen to any band I mentioned today that isn't well known, make it Crom.
The sound of horses clashing. Remember well my name before the flash of blade.
Vanquisher is a group I recently came across, and though a bit rough around the edges, I'm just a sucker for bands who A, love Conan, and B, go full-blown man-o-war by wearing fur and leather armor while skulking around a forest in a music video for no other reason than the aesthetic. But of course, it all comes down to the music and overall, solid heavy metal power metal. So yeah, give these guys a look. Oh, and if any of the members of Vanquisher see this, I got a legit question for you guys. Where do you get a fur loincloth? I need one. For the aesthetic. Numidian Chronicles are pretty new as a group, only releasing one single about the previously mentioned Frank Frazetta painting Death Dealer, and one full album about Conan titled The Savage Sword, which, hey, I really appreciate because I'm a huge fan of the Savage Sword of Conan books. But this album is solid for a first release, and these guys are very similar sounding to Blind Guardian, specifically Imaginations from the Other Side era Blind Guardian, which is my personal favorite Blind Guardian album. So you can better believe that I dig these guys. It does trail off a bit on some songs due to some of their length, and I think they could be trimmed down here and there. But hey, Monster Slayer is one of the best Conan songs I've ever heard, so I'll give you guys a pass.
But no one ever turn around. And isolatedly, and I live in no return. Does I feel...
The last band I want to talk about is Ancient Empire, who released Priest of Stygia. It's yet another full-blown concept album, and save for a few misses, when it hits with the fury of a Cimmerian born on the battlefield. Immortal, Beyond the North Wind, Island of the King, and my personal favorite, Nine Worlds.
Of the rules of gods and giants, the truth is
While Conan's influence on power metal isn't as great as Lord of the Rings or even Elric of Melniboné, I will say that I think in recent years, Conan's definitely found a ton of ground in the power metal scene, and as a fan of both the genre and the character, it does my heart good. But some of you may be wondering, why? Why now? Why has Conan suddenly become more popular in power metal? Well, can't really say for sure, but I think I have a pretty good answer. I said in the beginning that Conan is a staple of American pop culture. Conan's first appearance in Weird Tales all the way back in 1932. This character is almost 100 years old and to this day still appears in books, comics, video games, board games, TTRPGs, music, etc. A character that is approaching a full century with relevant stories still being told is beyond impressive. This character has been put through the ringer with numerous abandoned projects and even social commentary criticizing his existence, calling him dated or one of the dreaded nistophobes. I'm not going to comment on people dunking on the character for upsetting their sensibilities beyond just drawing attention to it, but if I may wax poetic for a second here, and feel free to disagree with me, but I have one major theory as to why Conan as a character has been so long-lasting and influential, and it all comes down to one major element about him: resilience. Nothing more, nothing less. Conan, at his core, is a resilient character, never bending to the harsh world of Hyboria. Nay, he trudges through the dark and bleak lands, carving his own path to glory, eventually becoming king by his own hand. And I feel like this one singular trait of his really resonates with metalheads, and very much so with fans of power metal. Metalheads and metal at large has often been treated by society as being dangerous, satanic, or just downright unpleasant to listen to. The otherization by our peers makes us feel like the whole world's against us. And when you get into power metal, like I've said before, power metal fans haven't been treated too well by our peers, even fellow metalheads. I mean, our music does sound much more in line with what the mainstream would enjoy, but we're often called cheesy, corny, or in my case, pussy shit. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I've been called a pussy by other metalheads for enjoying songs about sword and sorcery. Like, dude, you know I'm in the trenches with you, right? Now, I can't speak for everyone, but I do want to speak for myself on this. And one reason why I resonate so heavily with Conan is that pure resilience. A man striking out on his own in a world that would destroy or corrupt him, and he chooses to find his own path in life. I like to imagine that the spirit of Conan hits home for a lot of people who listen to power metal, and that's why he's experiencing this surge of artists making songs about him and his world. If you're a metalhead, and more specifically one who enjoys power metal, and you're not too familiar with Conan, I'm going to read a quote directly from Queen of the Black Coast that perfectly explains Conan's outlook on life, and I want to know if this speaks to you the way it spoke to me. I have known many gods. He who denies them is as blind as he who trusts them too deeply. I seek not beyond death. It may be the blackness averred by the Numidian skeptics, or Crom's realm of ice and cloud, or the snowy plains and vaulted halls of Nordhammer's Valhalla. I know not, nor do I care. Let me live deep while I live. Let me know the rich juices of red meats and stinging wine on my palate, the hot embrace of white arms, the mad exultation of battle, when the blue blades flame in crimson. And I am content. Let teachers and philosophers brood over questions of reality and illusion. I know this: if life is an illusion, then I am no less an illusion, and being thus, the illusion is real to me. I live, I burn with life, I love, I slay, and am content. In my research, I've come across several bands who have done songs about Conan, but to keep this video as brief as I could, I've limited it. But to be completely honest with you, if you're a power metal musician and you see this video, shill yourself in the comments. No, seriously. If you write a song about Conan, Hyboria, or anything Robert E. Howard related, post it, and I will definitely check it out. Or if you're just some random person who knows of a Conan power metal song you want me to check out, post it below. I will seriously listen to it. I'm always on the hunt for new music anyway, so give me that good stuff as soon as humanly possible.
I want to thank you all for watching, and please check out all of the musical acts that I have mentioned in this video, because there's some really awesome stuff in there. And also, if you're interested, please check out this video I've done on the world of Skarnoth. It is a creation of mine, actually, and one that I am looking to delve more into as this year goes on. And as well as next year, too. I'm not going to stop talking about it, so don't ask.